Welcome back, everyone, and this is Isabella. We're going to get into our fifth session for calculations, and this session is titled Calculations for Community Pharmacy. I know our last session covered compounding, day supply, and short-filled prescriptions, which you can probably see in community setting as well, but this setting we're going to be covering cost for prescriptions, like calculating dispensing fees with copays and difference pricing, which is just referring to the patient paying the difference of brand to generic or generic to brand. We'll calculate how to bill for compound, and we'll close with the usual and customary prices and the average wholesale price. So factoring that in to calculating for the final cost that the patient will pay. So let's get into this. It's starting with cost for filling a prescription. So one thing that is factored into that is what's called a dispensing fee, or you might see the term professional fee also. And this is a fee that the insurance company or the third party agrees to pay to the pharmacy for any expenses that is associated with filling the prescription. So that can include, rent or storage or the containers that holds, that type of thing. But it is a set fee, and this is contracted between the actual pharmacy and the third party. Sometimes there's a use of a chart that would decide that cost based upon the AWP of a product or the average wholesale price. In an example would be if the AWP is between, let's say $20 and $30, then the dispensing fee will be this amount. If it's lower than that, it would be this amount. So that's just a quick example how the charts work. So I'm moving to the next slide. Another factor for the cost of filling a prescription would be the patient's copay. And this is the amount that the patient is responsible for paying. And this is obviously when there's a third party involved, so the patient does have some form of insurance or a discount, but basically it's what the patient is responsible for paying. Now, some copay systems are set in tiers, and tiers is just, if I could liken it to groupings based upon the drug. And this is all set between the insurance company. They'll have different tiers, and the first tier would be the patient's lowest copay, and then maybe there's a second tier for in between. It'll be a little bit higher copay, and then there's a third tier, which would be drugs that would have the highest copay. So this is something that is between the patient and the third party. And usually copays are going to be a fixed dollar amount, so that if the patient gets a generic, he or she might pay $10 or $5. And if he or she gets a brand, then it might be $30 or $50. So it's rare that the copay will be based on a percentage, but in some cases that could be the case. Now, for brand versus generic, the tendency is that the patient will pay higher for a brand than a generic product. Now, there's rare situations where this is not so, and I've seen this in situations where a brand drug has recently been or the patent has expired recently, so there's now generics available, and sometimes there's a lag time for third parties to recognize it in their system or even accept it. Maybe they know it, but they're pending legalities or what have you to accept the generic. So I have seen in cases where, the patient is saying, I'll take generic because I know I'll save, but their insurance doesn't cover it, or it's a higher copay than what the brand would be, it's kind of rare, but I just thought that I'd throw that out there because I have seen that in some cases. But generally, usually when you get the brand, you will have a higher copay. Now, copays can also be a higher amount if the patient has to meet a deductible for the year. And typically deductibles, they start at the beginning of the year and they're only good, through that calendar year. So a patient might have a deductible, let's say, of $100. Then the patient would pay a higher amount for their prescriptions until that deductible has been met. And then their coverage will set in and they'll receive the lower copay. So again, this can all fluctuate depending on plans. Unfortunately, pharmacy staff do not have prior knowledge of specific copays or what plans cover. So when you have patients that come in and ask you this, it's always good to refer them to their insurance. And it's not that you're kind of passing the buck, it's just that, it would be virtually impossible for pharmacy staff to have memorized all the different aspects of all the numerous different insurance plans out there. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Another factor in cost for filling prescriptions, and this term is difference pricing. This is the amount in excess of that standard copay a patient would pay for a prescription when the third party only covers the cost of a generic and instead a brand name is dispensed. So in other words, an insurance company might recommend that you get generic, but a patient may really want a brand. So they're entitled to get a brand if that's what they want. They'll just most likely be responsible for that difference in cost added to the copay that they would have. So the difference in cost for brand versus generic, it's added to the copay, thus resulting in the amount that the patient will pay. And I'll just kind of give you a brief example, but let's say that the generic copay is $5. The patient wants to get brand, and the cost without insurance is $50. The cost for the generic is $15. The difference of that 50 to 15 is $35. So we add 35 to $5, so the patient would end up paying $40, which is only $10 lower than what it would cost without any insurance, but in some cases, patients may want to go down that route. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the next slide. Calculations for community pharmacy. Now, these are going to be computer generated, so please, we'll go through these examples, but don't think that you're going to have to be doing this for every transaction that you fill in the community setting. It's just impossible. But in any case, it's very helpful for you to know how it's conducted, how it's calculated, so that you're going to be prepared for your certification exam, as well as in a case that you are working in and maybe there's a question that arises and you need to work something through for whatever reason, or if that question comes up. So it's good that you have some type of knowledge or practice to maybe even double check what the computer is doing. But you will also have to have, in most cases, you're going to have the prescription to know what a patient's copay will be. And this is important because I've gotten calls from patients and they're not in the pharmacy, but they're calling, they're wanting to know, I have this particular order, I want to know what my insurance is going to charge me or what my copay will be. Now, you have to have the prescription in your pharmacy to bill the claim because it's the insurance that sets the copay. So it would be wrong to tell the patient that they're going to have this amount of copay or what have you. You really have to have that prescription in order to file a claim. Okay, so now let's take a look at a practice problem. In this example, we are asked, what is the copay for prescription of Toprol XL? And Toprol is a brand for metoprolol. It's a beta blocker medication that's used to lower blood pressure. It's also used for various heart conditions, but Toprol XL, 50 milligrams, number 30, is the order, and there's no DAW. And that just means that the doctor is not mandating that there be brand only. But the patient wants to pay the difference in pricing for the brand. So we're asking, what is that copay? The copay amount is $20, and the cost of the Toprol XL is $22.80. But the generic, so the metoprolol, is $10.40. So right away, you should see the difference pricing that's needed. So the brand, $22.80, the generic is $10.40. The difference would be the $12.40. So then you take that and you add it to the patient's copay of $20. So 20 plus the $12.40 gives us the $32.40. That is what the patient's copay would be, $32.40. So just remember, it's the difference of the brand versus the generic, and then you add that to the copay. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. I didn't do a video illustration of that because hopefully everybody gets that. It's pretty simple. So I'm just going to continue on with calculations for billing compounds. So billing compounds is a little bit more tedious because we have to factor in the various ingredients used. And if you remember that extemporaneous compounding, it is the on-demand preparation of a drug product. It's prescribed and it meets the unique needs of an individual. Remember, I had stated previously that you are creating something, you're making something that's not commercially available. So the billing requires your dispensing fee, your preparation fee. So remember, dispensing fee, it's the kind of a flat rate that is between the pharmacy and the third party to help cover the cost associated with dispensing, like the package container and what have you. And the preparation fee is actually going to be the fee for the labor to make it. Then you have the cost of the ingredients. You have to know the cost of each ingredient. And then you'll also need to know the quantities that you need to prepare for that particular prescription. So I'm going to move on, still under calculations for billing compounds. Usually this type of billing is already set within the computer. So that's a load off. If it's already set in the computer, you just simply type in what that particular quantity is for, and boom, the computer calculates it for you. But if the compound order is new to your pharmacy or slightly different with the ingredients or something like that, you'll have to enter new profile for the unique compound. So you want to be sure that when you do it initially that it is accurate, because then that's what technicians will use from here on out if they get an order that's the same as what you are putting in. So again, what you're going to need on hand, the required items for creation of this new profile includes the NDC of your ingredients, your necessary quantities. So you're going to have to do some calculations before plugging this into the computer. Then you will also need instructions for the recipe or steps to complete the compound, because in most cases the computer asks for this so that when it comes up again on a future fill, it automatically prints off the directions, quantities, NDCs, so that those technicians can just simply follow what the computer generates. And I just want to add one more thing to regarding this kind of entering information into the computer, because some cases you have everything accurate. You are right on. You've double checked your math and you've even had somebody else look at it. You have the right NDCs. But yet when you end, you get some astronomical figure that you know is not accurate in charging them this. You may want to call a third party or your computer support to assist with that entering of information, because I have seen in some cases they don't recognize an NDC, or they might somehow request that you put it in a strategic order. Like, let's say you're putting in 5 ingredients. They may want you to place the first ingredient, a particular one of the 5. So I know it seems kind of awkward, but I have seen that in some cases. So if this is the case, you might want to take that extra step to call for assistance and ask them, what are the specific steps that I need to enter these ingredients in. So I'm going to move on. Let's take a look at a practice problem for billing a compound. In this example, we're asked, how much would be charged for 120 mils of amiodarone, and that is an antiarrhythmic, amiodarone 5 milligram per ml suspension, if our dispensing fee is $4.25, the cost of ingredients is $22.70, and the compound was prepared in 20 minutes. Now the preparation fee, you see that it's just a flat rate of $35 an hour. So you will have to do a calculation to figure out what the cost would be for 20 minutes. So if you just take 35 over 60, because we know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, then we multiply that by 20 minutes, the time it took for preparing this, we get 1166. So you just simply add all these figures to get the amount that you're going to bill for. The dispensing fee is $4.25, the preparation fee is $11.66, and the cost of your ingredients is $22.70. Our total bill will be $38.62. Now why don't we take a look at a video illustration of a more complicated problem involving billing for compounds. The next illustration that you're going to see play out here is an example for billing for compounds. And these questions are pulled from chapter 20 in your calculations book. And we'll kind of go through the setup of this question, and then I'll put another sheet for our actual problem. But in this case, we are asked, how much should an insurance company be billed for the following compound if the compound was prepared in 20 minutes, the dispensing fee is $3.25, and they give us the tetracycline suspension is $1.25 per 5. We have to use capsules. We have a mixture of Ora Plus 50% and Ora Sweet 50%, QS 200. Remember, QS means that you're just going to add enough of Ora Plus and Ora Sweet to get to 200 mils total. So the cost for the ingredients they give on the tetracycline, it's 23 cents a capsule. And the Ora Plus and Ora Sweet, they tell us the amount per 100 or 473 mils, or $9.47 per pint. The preparation is $35 an hour, and the dispensing fee is $3.25. So I'm going to actually put another sheet here, and I'll write out all of the components of what we're being charged for. So the first one is the dispensing fee. And that's $3.25. Next, there's a preparation fee, which they tell us it's $35 an hour or $35 for 60 minutes. The time that it took to prepare this is 20 minutes. So we're not going to be charged $35. We're actually going to take 35 divided by 60, then multiply it by the 20 so that we can calculate what the preparation fee will be for this particular case. So when we do that, it's actually $11.67 for the preparation fee. Okay, and now we have to calculate for each ingredient, and then we'll add everything up. So the first ingredient that we saw was these tetracycline, which is an antibiotic. They're capsules that we're using, and they were 23 cents a capsule. So we'll start with the 23 cents. Because remember, we're trying to figure out the dollar amount here. So we will definitely start with the dollar amount on the top of our first fraction. So the 23 cents was for one capsule. And if you remember, it should be repetition by now, but we have capsule here. We know capsule will be the next unit. And the capsules we're using are 250 milligram capsules. So I'll have one capsule over 250 milligrams. Now if milligram is here, we'll also follow. This is where we're going to incorporate the concentration. If you remember, the last example we did was for billing or for compounding. We were using the number of capsules and calculating how many capsules we need. So this is the similar setup, but we add the cost in front because that's what we're calculating for. So here is where we'll incorporate the concentration. And that concentration that we're making, it's 125 milligrams per 5 mLs. And then the last step that we'll incorporate for this one is the total volume that we're making, which if you remember it said QS 200, so that's the 200 mils. So when we punch all these numbers out, I like to write this out so you can see how this will look like on your calculator. 0.23 times 1 times 125 times the 200 all over 1 times 250 times 5. So you will get 5750 over 1250, and that's 460. So this is the cost for the capsules we're going to use for the tetracycline. So we'll go back over here. 460. Now the last two ingredients are going to be for the Aura Plus and the Aura Sweet, which it's $9.47 for 473 mils. And fortunately, we're using an equal portion because it's 50% of Aura Plus, 50% Aura Sweet. So again, we're trying to calculate the cost. So dollar sign will be on the top. It's $9.47 for 473 mils. But we're not using 473. We're only using 100 because the 100 is half or 50% of the 200 total quantity that we're making. So 947 or 9.47 divided by 473 and then multiplied by the 100 is 2. So the Aura Plus and the Aura Sweet are each contributing $2. I kind of scratch that out there, but so these that you see all here are the cost of each ingredient, as well as the dispensing fee and the preparation fee. So we're going to add all of these up, and that's going to give us the total price for what we're going to bill for this particular compound. So when we add all that up, we'll get $23.52. So this, it seems very detailed, but we just took it one ingredient at a time. Remember to do that. I tend to lean more towards dimensional analysis. It's very helpful, especially in this particular case. We went from dollars to capsules and concentration and then total volume. So just don't forget to add everything up at the end, and we see we get our total cost here that we'll bill for. So this is it for the illustration on billing for compounds. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to end this session with the last concept that gives more details on factors that affect prescription costs. So I have some terms listed on here. The first one is the U and C, or the UCR. Those are actually synonymous. The usual and customary price, or usual and customary reasonable price. This is something that it's referencing like the maximum cost of a prescription that a patient should pay if there's no insurance or no third party. And what it entails is the average wholesale price plus the professional fee. So it's just basically, it's something determined to be a reasonable or a customary price. The AWP, or the average wholesale price, this is referring to the average cost that a pharmacy should pay for a given medication. You'll also hear the term acquisition cost, and this is the amount that the pharmacy actually pays for a given medication. So the standard price charged to patients who pay cash for prescriptions without third-party coverage is the UNC. And then the AWP is what pharmacies should pay, but the acquisition is what they actually pay. So these types of problems are going to involve you first calculating what the professional fee is, and you do that based on a chart. And I guess I should say prior to that, you're going to calculate the AWP for a certain quantity, because most times they'll give you the AWP for a full stock size bottle, but it's rare that you're going to fill for a stock size bottle. It's usually either 30 days or 90 days, but you'll calculate the AWP, you'll fit it into the chart to find, where it falls in this charting, and then you'll give the corresponding professional fee, then add that to the AWP. So let's take a look at an example. In this problem, we're to use the following guidelines. The AWP is, if it's less than 15, then your professional fee will be $3. If the AWP is $15.01 to $35, then the corresponding professional fee is $4. If it's greater than $35.01, then the professional fee will be $5. So we're asked, what is the price, or the usual and customary, for a doxycycline order 100 milligrams, number 30, and the AWP for 100 is $5.24. So just remember, the general gist is the AWP plus the professional fee equals the usual and customary cost. So what is the price for doxycycline 100 milligram caps, number 30, AWP for 100 is $5.24. So first we have to find out what professional fee will this order be given, and we have to calculate what the AWP for 30 capsules is. If the AWP for 100 is $5.24, then we'll simply have $5.24 over 100 caps multiplied by 30 caps. and that gives us $1.57. So now we take that and we plug that back into the original chart, and we see that, I'm going to the next slide now, according to the chart, the AWP is less than 15, then the professional fee is $3. So we'll take the $3 and we'll add it to the AWP of $157. Our resulting price for the prescription will be $4.57. So now let's look at a more complicated problem on video illustration, and that will conclude this session. Hi, now we're looking at an illustration that covers calculating AWPs and retail cost. This is more of like billing and calculations you'll see for community pharmacy. It's titled Usual and Customary, which is just referring to the type of problems you'll see when we're calculating what a patient will pay for when they're picking up a prescription. So these examples are pulled from chapter 22 in your calculations book. And in this question, we're asked to calculate the retail price of the following prescriptions using the formula AWP, which just stands for average wholesale price, plus the professional fee. This is just something that all prescriptions are charged. It's the fee that helps to go for covering like rent and supplies and personnel. So this is tied to all prescriptions. When added to AWP, it equals the retail price of the prescription. If the professional fee is used following this chart. So first we're going to have to calculate the AWP, because if it hits one of these three, then the corresponding professional fee is what we'll add to the AWP. So that's the chart we're going to use. And this is the example that we're going to pull from. And this is for glyburide, 5 milligrams. Glyburide is an anti-diabetic drug. We're getting 30 tablets, and the AWP for 1,000 is $440.05. So we're not getting 1,000, we're actually only getting 30. But what we're calculating is the dollar amount. So we will have $440.05 over 1,000, because those two figures go together. But we're calculating for 30 tabs. So the AWP for 30 tabs, you would just take 440.05 divided by 1,000 multiplied by 30, and you'll get 1320. So this is the AWP for 30 tablets. When we go back to the chart, we can see that our fee is going to be $4 because the AWP is less than 20. So when we add that professional fee of $4, then you see that our total cost is $17.20.